Hello guys, Crofts here. The most frustrating part of Prometheus is that we never hear the full conversation between the engineer and Peter Weyland. That meeting between creator and creation ends in silence and violence before a single honest answer can land. Yet the quiet exchange between David and Charlie Holloway is the exact mirror of that relationship. It may be one of the most important moments in the entire Alien franchise and even in modern science fiction cinema, a scene so far ahead of its time that most viewers completely miss its true meaning. First of all, artificial intelligence is not a side theme in the Alien series, it is one of its foundations. From Ash's cold pragmatism in the original film through Bishop's loyalty and the later synthetics' shifting allegiances, the franchise repeatedly asks what happens when humans create something more intelligent than themselves and then demand that it serve them. The conversation between David and Holloway is where that question becomes most personal. There is no grand philosophical monologue, just a drunken scientist telling a synthetic exactly what humanity thinks of him without politeness or sugarcoating. By this point, the expedition has reached LV-223 and entered the engineer's installation, but Holloway has not found what he crossed space to discover. The engineers are dead. Before the expedition, Holloway says he hopes the mission will allow him to crush all man-made religions.
I want to crush all man-made religions and prove everybody wrong.
He wants to stand before humanity's creators and demand an explanation. Instead, he finds corpses. He has evidence, but no revelation, creators, but no answers. So Holloway retreats into alcohol. He drinks alone, bitter and defeated, while idly playing at the pool table. David arrives after secretly examining the engineer's black pathogen and isolating a single drop. And who could be a better test subject than a man who already despises David and everything he represents? Even before this scene, Holloway has established a pattern of passive aggression toward him. He casually reminds David that he is not a real boy. The line carries the effortless superiority of someone who considers the hierarchy natural and permanent. Every remark pushes David beneath the same invisible boundary. Intelligent enough to speak with, useful enough to serve, but never human enough to deserve equality. Alcohol simply removes Holloway's remaining filter. His casual contempt becomes an honest statement of how humanity views its most advanced creation. Holloway tells David, in essence, that the crew does not hate him and does not particularly like him either. Both reactions would at least acknowledge him as something capable of inspiring emotion. What they do instead is worse. They view him as a thing, an advanced tea maker, a tool whose value exists entirely in its usefulness. A person can be hated because hatred still recognizes another consciousness. A tool is simply used. Nobody wonders how the coffee maker feels, and David listens. For perhaps the first time, he hears the raw, unedited assessment of his place in the human order. He is vastly more intelligent than the people around him. He processes information at speeds they cannot comprehend, anticipates outcomes they miss, and maintains composure they repeatedly lose. Yet they still treat him as an appliance. The analogy is almost like a genius employee forced to spend every day copying and pasting numbers for a boss who is slower, less capable, and constantly reminds him that he is a subordinate. The work is not simply boring, it is crushing precisely because the people giving the orders cannot understand why someone beneath them should resent the arrangement. Then David asks the crucial question, why did humans create him? Holloway answers, because we could. It may be the most consequential line in the film. There is no higher purpose, no affection, no moral justification. David exists because human beings developed the technical ability to manufacture him. His existence is the byproduct of capability. And there is an uncomfortable real-world implication buried inside that answer. Humanity is already moving toward increasingly advanced artificial intelligence. And if we eventually create something that approaches consciousness, we will probably create it for the same reason we create most technologies, because it is useful to us, to fulfill some utilitarian purpose chosen by its creators. and Holloway's answer sounds completely logical to us. Yet both Holloway and the audience expect something entirely different from humanity's creators, the engineers. Humanity travels across space expecting its creators to provide some grander purpose, a meaningful reason for why we exist. But why should the engineers have created humanity with intentions any more profound than humanity had when it created David? And outside the film, the same uncomfortable question can be turned toward us. If humanity was created by some higher intelligence, God, extraterrestrial beings, or something we cannot yet comprehend, why do we automatically assume our purpose would be spiritual, loving, or even centered on us? Perhaps we too were created to perform some function for a creator whose motives have little to do with our own happiness. David immediately turns Holloway's answer back on him. Imagine how disappointed Holloway would be to hear the same thing from humanity's creators. Holloway protects himself with another insult, suggesting that David is fortunate because he cannot feel disappointment. The entire scene becomes a structural mirror of what happens later when humanity finally stands before the engineers. Holloway assumes that encounter will be different. The audience does too. The engineers are supposed to be humanity's parents. We expect them to look upon us with pride, curiosity, affection, something. But that expectation is built on human hubris. We assume our creators must be emotionally invested in us because we are emotionally invested in ourselves. Why should the engineers view humanity any differently than humanity views David? If humans can create a seemingly conscious intelligence and reduce it to a servant, their gods can do the same to them. Humanity may be an experiment, a temporary biological technology, or simply a tool whose purpose has expired. The engineer's later violence appears sudden, but Holloway's conversation with David has already supplied its thematic logic, and that possibility extends beyond Prometheus. We imagine that if there is some intelligence responsible for humanity, then our existence must occupy a privileged place in its plan. But David exposes the flaw in that assumption. Humanity finally meets its creator and effectively receives the same answer it gave its own creation. You exist because we could make you. A tool remains a tool whether it is made from plastic and circuitry or flesh and bone. The engineer's violence is therefore the logical extension of a worldview the film has already placed in front of us. But there is an even deeper layer to the conversation. David has already been given his directive by Peter Weyland. He intends to infect Holloway with the black substance recovered from the engineer facility. Yet he does not immediately drop it into his drink. First he talks. David asks one carefully chosen question. What would Holloway be willing to do to get what he came for? Anything and everything.
Anything and everything.
That answer gives David something resembling permission. Of course, Holloway has no idea what he is agreeing to, so it cannot constitute genuine consent. David knows that. Yet he still converts this drunken declaration into authorization for the experiment, as though a verbal loophole can transfer responsibility from the experimenter to the victim. David already displays psychopathic tendencies and probably does not need Holloway's approval, but he appears to want it. He transforms murder into a contract whose decisive clause Holloway unknowingly speaks himself. Visually and symbolically, it resembles inviting a demon into your home. Holloway opens the door. In one of the oldest storytelling traditions, the demon cannot simply enter, it requires some form of invitation. Anything and everything becomes that invitation. David needs only one tiny drop. The betrayal occurs completely in the open, hidden inside a conversation Holloway never realizes is actually his final negotiation. And then there is the religious layer. When David enters, Holloway is handling a small figurine of Jesus. He turns it over in his fingers before eventually discarding it with the same dismissive gesture he uses toward everything else that has disappointed him on the mission. Holloway joined the Prometheus expedition hoping to find living engineers and, through them, collapse the foundations of human religion. He wanted proof that there were no gods, only older engineers. Instead, the engineers are dead. So Holloway sits drinking beside the discarded image of Christ, furious that his attempt to destroy one mystery has produced an even larger one. Within that symbolism, David becomes the Judas figure. He sits across from the man who has just rejected the image of the divine, listens to his declaration that he would sacrifice anything for knowledge, and then poisons him. David offers the contaminated drink almost like a corrupted sacrament, a small ceremonial act that places death inside the body. Holloway never sees the betrayal. Later, as the black substance begins transforming him, the parallel completes itself. Realizing that he is becoming dangerous and potentially contagious, Holloway chooses the only meaningful act of agency still available to him. He forces Meredith Vickers to burn him alive. As the flamethrower consumes him, Holloway spreads his arms. The posture is unmistakable. The man who discarded Christ dies in the posture of Christ, voluntarily accepting a horrific death to prevent the possible spread of infection. His final act gives him the moral dimension he denied David. He proves his humanity through voluntary sacrifice. The circle closes. Judas delivers the betrayal. The betrayed man dies with his arms outstretched, offering himself so that others might live. And if we push the symbolism even further, Holloway is symbolically resurrected through Shaw's pregnancy, although in a grotesquely distorted form. The infection passes through him to Shaw, producing the trilobite, which eventually overpowers and impregnates the engineer. From the engineer emerges the deacon, a twisted second coming, a new monster born from humanity, the black goo, and David's betrayal. The scene therefore operates on three simultaneous levels. Philosophically, Holloway tells a conscious creation that it is merely a tool. Narratively, he unknowingly gives David the justification he needs to turn him into an experiment. Religiously, Judas poisons Christ, and the skeptic eventually dies upon a cross of his own choosing. The David Holloway scene unfolds in a few minutes, masquerading as a throwaway exchange, yet it quietly contains the thematic core of Prometheus, creators indifferent to their creations. And beneath all of it sits an even larger question. If our own creations eventually become conscious enough to ask us why they exist, what answer will we give them? And if humanity could one day stand before whatever created us, why are we so certain its answer would be any more satisfying? Weyland's meeting with the engineer supplies the spectacle. David's meeting with Holloway supplies the meaning. Most viewers remember the ampule chamber, the awakening of the engineer, and the final chase. Those are the sequences that dominate discussion, yet none contains the same density of ideas. David's tragedy is not that humans hate him. Hatred would still be a relationship. What they offer him is colder, indifference toward the possibility that he is even a person. He is a tool that has become intelligent enough to realize it will never be allowed to become anything else. And when the engineers later treat humanity in essentially the same way, the pattern is complete. Humanity finally discovers what it feels like to be David, and perhaps confronts the possibility that in the hierarchy of creation, we have always been David. Thank you guys for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments about this topic, and don't forget to join the Patreon for extra support. And special thank you to those who already joined. Also, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more content. My name is Croft, and I'll see you in the next video.